What up, Hyperchange? Welcome to another episode. Today we're going to talk about Waymo, Google's self-driving car project, dive into the progress that they've had. They just announced a funding round of $2.25 billion, the first external funding ever by Waymo, valuing this as at a $30 billion valuation as its own company. And just so I want to dive into, what is the actual progress of their consumer-facing app? How close are they to mainstream adoption of their Robotaxi network? And then additionally, how are the financials? How is the business of Waymo actually looking? Because I think that can give us some serious insight into where this is all headed. So let's just jump right into it. In December 2019, Waymo One, which is the name of their service, basically their app like Uber, where you can request these robo-taxis without drivers, autonomous vehicles. They put out a year in review saying that they've had achieved 1,500 monthly active riders, tripled the number of weekly rides since January 2019, and they have done 100,000 total rides since launching in 2017. They have this nice little timeline here. In winter 2019, they actually made the app available in the App Store. So this was nice progress. But I think, the consensus here is Waymo has put out this app. It looks really cool. It seems to work in about a 50 square mile radius of Phoenix, but not that many people have been able to access it. They're only generating maybe a couple 100,000 in revenue for a program that's costing them hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. But they're saying, okay, we're getting off the ground, a little bit of early traction. Additionally, in January of 2020, January 29th, they launched this partnership with UPS. They're trying to get into the package delivery game as well. I thought this was interesting. And they've actually since sort of doubled down on this thing called Waymo Via, not to be confused with the ride-sharing company Via, but Waymo Via, which is essentially this idea that Waymo will be moving around stuff, not just people. And there's two components of this Waymo business, robo-taxis for consumers, and then robo-taxis and robo-trucks for businesses and moving around packages and that sort of thing. So they announced this cool partnership with UPS, although I was a little bit confused with this GIF and thing because I'm like, okay, well, aren't they still going to need a driver to take out the packages and deliver the packages of the car? So the benefits of being driverless wouldn't even be there. I don't know, but and that gets me to actually a bigger point of this whole video, which Waymo's driverless taxi network isn't even really driverless, but more on that in a second. March 2nd, 2020, Waymo raises its first external investment round. This is about a week ago. They announced this. This was a pretty big deal. Apparently, there have been a lot of rumors that Google had been looking for outside funding for Waymo. Up until now, Google has been the sole funder of the project, or Alphabet. They spun Waymo out as their own company in 2016, but since then, they haven't actually accepted outside funding until now. So they announced that Silver Lake, Canada's pension plan investment board, Mubadala Investment Company are, I guess, the leader investments in this. Additional investors include Magna International, Andreessen Horowitz, and AutoNation, as well as Alphabet. They claim this investment round follows a series of recent major operational and technical milestones. The Waymo driver has driven more than 20 million miles on public roads across 25 cities and over 10 billion miles in simulation. Engineers and technicians at Waymo's Detroit factory, the world's first factory dedicated to the mass production of L4 autonomous vehicles, have shipped the first vehicles, electric cars and Class 8 trucks integrated with 5th generation hardware with all new, more powerful compute and more capable sensing. So, Waymo is sort of in this extremely intensive R&D phase right now, getting hundreds of these cars on the road, deploying them with all these sensors at the same time, developing new sensor suites to make them cheaper, to make them, more efficient, better at self-driving. So all of this super intensive R&D, but they really don't give us too many details on what's the timeline for commercialization. When is this happening? They're touting, they're doing, 1,500 monthly rides, but, is this really ramping? Is this really ready for prime time? So the more I looked into this, and I also thought it was interesting that they mentioned this Waymo Via thing in the press release, a little bit more on this. You can see these really cool trucks that they have that they're planning on getting into, moving goods. Anyway, I think that's an interesting side hustle. At the same time that this blog post came out from Waymo, we got a report from The Information, which I don't actually have access to, but VentureBeat summarizes it here, saying that Waymo has doubled its headcount to 1,500 employees, known as Waymonauts, from 800 a year ago. Estimated cost is about $1 billion for Waymo, while its Waymo One service yielding just about a couple $100,000 a year in revenue. Hasn't shared the number of customers who have ridden its fleet of over 600 vehicles to date, but it said last December that over 15 people are using its ride-hailing service monthly, and that it has served 100,000 total rides since launching its rider programs in 2017. Just to put that in perspective, Waymo's done 100,000 rides in its history history. Since launching 3 years ago, Uber has done 1.9 billion last quarter alone. Anyway, that just goes to show you how, small and micro, like you could even call this basically a beta rollout for Waymo up until this point. That got me wondering, what is going on under the hood at Waymo? Why aren't they launching this service? Why isn't it expanding more rapidly? And why are there rumors about contractors actually being in the car? And there was this really interesting article that came out in January saying Waymo sees human drivers in autonomous cars for foreseeable future. And they even have a quote from Waymo's head of operations saying, for the foreseeable future, as we expand and are driving in some of these new areas, it is critical that we have vehicle operators. And as part of this article, they describe how Waymo has enlisted this company called Transdev, essentially these people that say test driving or driving as a service, essentially hiring massive fleets of contractors to actually get in their self-driving cars. So now this is, to me, where it's really interesting and really confusing, because Waymo's saying, okay, we're ready for commercial launch of our self-driving taxi network, but all of our self-driving taxis, or at least a huge chunk of them, are actually gonna have people in the front seat monitoring the vehicle. So it's not truly driverless. This whole holy grail of economics of the Robotaxi, of making it way cheaper to facilitate transportation without a driver and making it way safer, is this huge holy grail promise. But if you have a driver in the front seat that you have to pay to monitor all of this, you're not really solving any of the problems that you set out to tackle. And so that's where I see as this really catch-22 of Waymo, is the technology is not ready for them to go L5 autonomous, and they have to hire all of these contractors. So it sounds like Waymo is needing these contractors to be in the rides with consumers while doing the driving, and in the vehicles while they're just generating test miles, maybe not actually on the Waymo One platform. So Waymo needs a huge amount of these contractors in their vehicles. And in this article, it says that the value of the deal in its first year is in the tens of millions of dollars and could reach 9 figures, which could potentially be in the hundreds of millions of dollars just spent on contractors to operate this network. So now I see this key weak point and Achilles heel of Google. And quickly diving into the 10K of Google, just to show you the financial situation. I know that article said that Waymo, the information article said Waymo is losing about $1 billion a year, but that's just speculation. If we actually go into their SEC filings, Waymo is part of the other bets section of Google. We can see the other bets revenue there, 477 million, 595 million, 659 million. They've actually disclosed that most of that is not Waymo. We don't know how much is Waymo at all. The guess is somewhere around a couple $100,000. So not contributing to that revenue, but the losses from the other bet system there, 2.7 billion to 3.35 billion to 4.8 billion. So huge losses that are becoming, over 10% of Google's operating income, and growing from this other bets business. And my guess is a huge chunk of that is Waymo. And so now you have this interesting friction where Google, Waymo's project is taking longer to get to commercialization. They're not able to actually generate revenue from that, definitely not profitability, but it's still spending and bleeding hundreds of millions of dollars. So my interpretation is, if this was a great business, if Waymo still had huge potential, Alphabet and Google will be putting up all of the capital to continue funding the R&D and not sell equity in this venture because it has so much potential, and it's going so well. But I think the fact that Google is pulling back, letting outside investors come in, and these outside investors like the Canada Pension Plan, I don't know, these don't seem like the smartest money, frankly, that are coming into this deal. They're getting technology focused investors into Waymo. To me, it seems like they're cashing out. A lot of people have been saying the $30 billion valuation is a disappointment because Waymo was valued at $175 billion. I think that's total BS. The $175 billion valuation was like this theoretical thing put out by Morgan Stanley a long time ago, not a real valuation. But the fact is now that they could even raise at $30 billion for a company just losing hundreds of millions with no path to revenue. To me, $30 billion is already a pretty lofty valuation for what Waymo's doing and what's going on right now. So anyway, at a high level right now, I think Waymo is in this weird stalling point. I would love to know if you've actually been in Phoenix and taken a Waymo One ride, but it looks like Waymo One, they're touting that it's this service out in the wild, but it's only serving 1,000 or 2,000 people, not really generating any revenue, while this Waymo project as a whole is losing hundreds of millions, while Google's getting into contracts to sign up a bunch of contractors because they know they can't achieve full self-driving. I mean, I think this is going totally in the wrong direction, getting closer and closer to being shut down the more we see what actually happens with Waymo. Like if you told me a year ago or 2 years ago about Waymo, I was like, wow, like it seems like they may actually be ahead of Tesla. Like, they're actually ready to launch this service. Tesla hasn't really done anything. Now, all of a sudden, fast forward, we've seen Tesla rapidly iterate on their self-driving features, continue to make a bunch of progress on their visualization platform and actually on the, progress of their core technology. They're collecting billions and billions of miles of data. Now we're seeing Waymo. Yes, they've got up to 20 million miles of data. This is still like 1/1000th of the data that Tesla has, and they're collecting it at a much slower rate. And at the same time, like their service hasn't scaled. Like they basically had to pull back all their plans to launch this massive massive service. And then on a secondary level, they're still using these Chrysler minivans. They did announce this big fancy partnership with Jaguar. Of course, all hype and fluff. No real, no real actually getting I-Paces on the road in the network at least yet. So they're literally still, relying on cars that burn fossil fuels to run around this network. They're hybrids. I really think that's an Achilles heel. They need to go all in on electric vehicles for this robot autonomous taxi network, especially from a marketing perspective, and to make the economics of this work. And so, at a high level, I'm just like, what is Waymo doing? That is the point of this video. I'm like, what is going on at Waymo? They're spending hundreds of millions of dollars, bleeding all of this cash, making almost no progress. And I'm just curious what happens next from here. To me, taking on outside capital is like the first sort of sign of Waymo dying. What are they going to do in another year or two when they need another $4 billion, but they're still nowhere near closer to launch? That's where things get dicey. That's where I'm losing confidence in this. And I've kind of been doubling down on my thesis that I think Tesla is the only company that even really has an autonomous strategy that can be taken seriously, because A, they have figured out a financial way to get over 1 million cars on the road, sending them data, refining their process, subsidizing that hardware cost. Waymo has not been able to find that, and they're just losing money on every single ride. And how long can that continue? That's what the investors in Waymo will have to decide. So really interesting to see how this plays out. Wanted to give you all an update on Waymo. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Huge shout out to our Patreon supporters, producers, fun in the channel. See you guys next time. Peace.